Well, you know, at the time, Commissioner Rock kind of talked about it. I don't think it was a consensus because of the no bus service.
But the building is, it looks like Making Circle has moved.
No, I know, but, I mean, there was no way to, I don't think, there could have been, but I don't think that was the consensus.
Well, we don't, I don't think that's practical. I know it's the center of the city. You could have a branch out there. When I was running that office, we had one at the West Roads, which is way out there, and we had the branch downtown, or the office downtown. And frankly, I don't know why a branch doesn't work. It worked years ago. So, I don't know why it doesn't now. So, anyway, I do think the election office should be included in that. I don't think it should go to 156 at Maple, though, unless there's a substantial branch on the eastern part of the city. Chris?
I don't disagree with any of the logic, but I don't think this is logical. The blueprint has already been laid out in about 3 or 4 of the past elections out there, ours included. And I'm thinking, okay, the equipment and other things like that, that's a massive investment. It's public safety. You got to go and you can do it. But I agree with the comment that Doug made that 2 bonds is going to be confusing. But one at a big amount is a no-go. And I think you got to get minimal. I don't know if you get the 2 at a later date, but right now I think you got a limited window. And they proved, and I'm saying the western half of the district, that they will vote that down on several occasions. This issue about the environmental services piece, you can make that same argument in the regular budget. It's going to be an increase on the lid either way. The only thing is the people approving one, and the other one, we would be approving it through whatever route. I mean, I think Jerry's argument for the savings, you can make that through the regular budget process. But if this thing goes down, that lid is going to have to go up what? I mean,
well, we'd have to buy the $15 million worth of equipment,
and you can't absorb that. That's a lid increase somewhere. So I'm just saying, the main point I'm saying is that it's logical. It probably would be in any other environment in the past, but you got. I think this is going to be ultra hard, uber hard. And anything outside of that is just going to be a strain.
Well, I'm not in charge of the 2 ballots, so we'll go with one. That's just my fear, is that it could jeopardize it, because I don't know if people will vote to have, new pipes put in corrections. I don't know if they see that as you see. But Joe, I want to ask you, I brought this up before, but years ago, Douglas County, when we had a computer center up the street in the old Watson Brothers building, they had a mechanism to buy computer equipment, and I don't know what it was. Do you know at all?
I think they had a special corp that bought it.
Data Corp, Douglas County Data
Corp.
Right.
And how they pay for it?
And I think they issued debt, and I can't remember this exactly, but I think if you use that special purpose corp, then it doesn't have to go to a vote of the people, if I remember right. But I'm not an expert on this yet.
Well, we wouldn't be, Chris. We wouldn't be writing a check for $15 million or whatever. This is what we'd have to do, is to go through something like that.
But that has, I think that has a limit on it.
Pardon me?
That has, it's something that you can't use that way. I mean, you can use it, but just like there's a ceiling somewhere on that.
There's a ceiling, and it has to be obviously specific to what you're setting that corporation up for. So if it would be a facilities corporation, that actually is a little broader than the IT corporation, the data corporation that we had. But
Well, I think we need to look into that. Ms. Legal Beagle, will you do some checking?
We'll talk to Baird Home, and we'll talk to bond counsel,
Okay.
because I think that's pretty specialized. We'll get their opinion on it.
Any other questions or comments? Let's see, you talked about selling the property. Okay, and I do think, I don't know, is there any objection to including the election office in this? I mean, really? Why does Minky Circle get sold and the election office doesn't?
I don't agree with Minky Circle.
Oh, okay.
I don't agree. Only thing I think should be there is 911 corrections, because that's
take everything out except that?
Everything except that. That's the true integrity of it. I mean, I think it's a similar example. when they, you know, and it's the relevant example.
So we
And
forget
the
about-
audience I think you're talking to is West, and people think,
Yeah.
and I don't think just putting that bond issue with public safety is going to be that easy. The last bond issue that they voted for out there was OPS, and you know why?
Yeah,
They wanted the school.
yeah.
First half is land. You want to
Yeah.
get the other part, they're gonna vote yes on this other piece
Well, you know,
coming
the
up.
deal is though, if you don't include what he talked about with putting the treasurer's office at 156, what does West Omaha get?
That's my question.
Well, I think that's why you have to include those.
And that's why you can't. That's why when you add more
Okay.
into it, they don't get anything.
All right.
It's you just ask them to vote for more money, and they
Mr.
said in the
Kavanaugh-
past they're
Mr.
not gonna do
Kavanaugh is
that.
next, and then Mr. Kraft, and then.
Right, and I've said this over and over again, we're looking at a public safety and a property improvement package of about $45 million. We've discussed this over and over. It's a tenth of the size of the OPS bond issue that passed 2 years ago when our relatively minor bond issue failed. There are clear lessons that can be drawn from that. And one of the major ones is you don't sell stuff unless you market it. And we did not properly market ours, no blame intended for anyone, but we should be able to learn from a successful marketing model. And a $500 million bond issue passed, which had incredible stuff in it. Pick up this morning's paper and you'll see him breaking ground at Indian Hills School for a bunch of stuff that doesn't really have much to do with educating my kid at King Science. But it was marketed correctly. And we can market this to include everything that we have in this 45 million, or we can raise property taxes down the line piecemeal for a chunk here and a chunk there. I'm opposed to that. This is the bus we should get on. We move on this in a responsible fashion with community support, like the first responders that Mike's been in discussions with and others who are totally supportive of this concept. And people who are fiscally responsible in the community who I think see the wisdom of proper financing for these needed deals. And Western Douglas County, which voted against the last bond issue because it wasn't marketed in Western Douglas County at all, but can see, I think, the benefits to having county government close to where they live. The center of gravity of Douglas County has moved significantly in the last generation, and the property that we're improving is closer to the center of gravity than a lot of the properties that we're anticipating divesting ourselves with and combining into this. So for all of those reasons, I think that we should really think about using our AAA bond rating, and I want to get on board because I don't want to be the only one not to praise Joe Lorenz and today's we have good credit out there. It's a good time, I think, to go to the market from the bond people that we've been talking about. We're going to get a good interest rate, and we should do it all so that we don't have to come back piecemeal on the property tax holders of Douglas County who, if Turk prevails, are already going to get an unrequested bump in their property tax burden. So, you know, I think we're in a good position here. I think the discussion we had last week, and Mike, your outreach to people in the community has been positively received, is all indicator signs that we can sell this at the full price of 45 million plus or minus, that we have good public policy arguments for having the emergency services people and the environmental services people in the boat, and that the other build out of the thing, as Commissioner Morgan has pointed out, is just fiscally responsible. If you're doing a building, you don't do half of a roof, you don't do half of the windows, you don't do half of a sidewalk, you do the whole thing. So we're, I think, going to be probably talking real sharp pencil dollars and cents next Tuesday at the Administrative Services Committee. But what we have seen and what we have before us in this package is essentially, I think, where we should go for all of those reasons, and appreciate the hard work that Jerry and his folks have put in on this. I know that they've still got work to do on whittling it down to the absolute hardest budget that we can get, and we'll get there. But doing it all at this time, like OPS is doing it all at this time, is just good fiscal policy, and we'll avoid the alternative, which is a property tax increase.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, Jerry, when we put in the, because there's gonna be geothermal involved.
Yes.
When we put in geothermal at the Goodwill building, what was the initial expected payback period and what is the actual payback period?
I think it was 11 years, does that sound right?
Yeah, it was right around 10, 11.
It may be by the time we get finished, because it's very favorable our way in a reduction. It could be 9. We're on the 5th year right now.
Right.
The end of the 5th.
So-
We've been there.
That'll be another savings.
It is. And if I may invoke Doug back in, because I don't think Doug and Jeff realized, of course, he worked on the 42nd campus for the state, but I think what they saw yesterday was a bit of an eye-opener, wasn't it?
Very convincing, especially in the long run. And
Yeah,
if you look at the private.
we sat down in one of those, which we describe at the Fitz home, where we share a conference room, and we share a lunchroom. And, I mean, it literally was Doug with his paper and me with my paper and.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's gonna say, I'm not going to vote for this bond. I want public safety, but I don't wanna pay for the rest of this. And therefore, I'm not gonna vote for the bond. I just cannot imagine, I'm sure there's a few people who do that. But the majority of people, public safety is what will catch their eye. Facility improvement, everybody knows you have to maintain the buildings. I honestly believe we need to do the whole thing all in one bite. And believe me, if we can convince Doug,
Well,
Which is difficult.
Well, if I could say, if I could do this, I think we're hashing and hashing. I think we've reached consensus, we're gonna do it all at one
Yeah,
time, that's the way
okay.
we wanna do it. So, Doug, and are you through with Mr. Kraft?
yes, yeah, I'll let
Okay,
you.
Doug is next.
Yeah, I echo Commissioner Kavanaugh when he said that this is how it's marketed. We fought the OPS bond issue and we lost. But they cleverly strategized it so that everybody in every part of the school district got something. Like up in my neighborhood, all my neighbors complained about Beveridge Junior High being in bad shape, the air conditioners, you couldn't hear the teachers, etc. So people bought into it. The NRD, on the other hand, marketed the wrong way. They used to use what we call the Chicken Little strategy. They said, oh, everybody's going to get flooded if you don't build the dams. Well, if you live in the south part of Sarpy County, they may have bought into it, but the people up north didn't buy into it, and it went down in flames.
Okay, next person is Chris Rogers.
Okay, this is my last on it because, it'll go where it's going to go. But, Doug's right. Everybody got something. And the fact is that Western Douglas County is one for at least 6, 1 for 6. The one is OPS. And yeah, they marketed it, but they had the power of the chamber and its kids. Western Douglas County voted twice against schools down. They voted against kids. I don't know if they're gonna vote against 911, so they didn't vote for floods. And OPS didn't put it all in one. OPS was $1 billion. They split it in 2. And I was in the room for that to some degree. So the only thing I'm saying is, if it goes when it goes, I think you got a once in a lifetime window with this, because if it fails now, it's not like you can come back in 18. You failed once already. You got to come back and go. So that's my whole point. That the terrain is different out there. Because the fact is, I don't think you're guaranteed to get it out north.
That's right. Mr. Duda?
A couple of thoughts. One, this bond issue is a property tax increase. And so to say that if we don't put it in here, it's going to end up raising property taxes. Well, if we do put it in here, it's going to end up raising property taxes. That's how we pay for the bond. These are all property tax dollars. I think I'm okay with the larger package, but Doug took the time to come out and learn about the issue. And most people aren't going to do that. Like the mayor. Where's she? Because I think that's going to be a real big factor in this thing. If they fight us on this, we're dead. And I'm not sure where they are. I think they're kind of playing games or something. They aren't necessarily on board, and we've got to have everybody on board.
Mr. Kavanaugh?
And I just want to tap into something that Doug mentioned about the NRDs. This is just for historical context only, but last week in the paper, there was a photo that the Omaha World Herald runs occasionally, historical photos. The photo was historically accurate, the caption was not. Of the flood in June of 1964, which claimed, I think, 11 or 12 lives in Omaha, and resulted in the building of the dams that are now Lake Cunningham, Standing Bear, and Zorinsky. I know this because my father was a county commissioner at that time and took me out that night. And the county, Douglas County, was one of the instrumental movers on establishing that flood control system that we today enjoy. And you know, as a historical context, it was this board and not the Corps of Engineers, as the Omaha World Herald had it in their revisionist history caption, that took the leadership role in building that. And you know, it involved some responsible use of our financing then. And Commissioner Duda's right. Anything that we pretty much do, eventually, has got to be paid for out of our mill levy. But there's payments and there's payments. You want to raise $15 million out of our mill levy next year, you're going to have a substantial honking property tax increase on homeowners. You want to pay for a bond issue for $45 million over 20 years, Joe?
Yeah, and we would structure it where the first few years would be interest only. So, you know, let's say it'd be less than $1 million.
Okay. It's the difference between buying your $200,000 house with a $200,000 check on day one, or buying your $200,000 house with a $20,000 down payment and a 15-year mortgage of $1,500 a month. That's the difference we're talking about here. Both of them are coming out of my pocket, the mortgage payment and the, you know, cash payment. But most people buy using responsible financing with a mortgage, and essentially that's what this is. The advantage to that is the low interest rate of what are we going to the market right now on a refi?
Well, we're out in the market today. I think I looked at 10-year T-bills about 1.7. So on average, we'll come in, probably my guess is slightly under 2% on the refinancing.
So I think the consensus is to finance the purchase of this like you would finance the purchase of a home using a mortgage, rather than finance it by writing a big honking check for the entire purchase price on day one.
Any other questions or comments, Joe?
One thing I would add is, you were talking about what's the benefit for western Douglas County. You know, I live in West Omaha, and I think one of the big hooks here is that having a new treasurer's at the Fitz Home with a drive-through, because anyone who lives in West Omaha and has to spend time at 108th and Maple, you know, really learns to dread it. And I think most people in West Omaha have that feeling. And so I think people in West Omaha see, oh, a new driver's license place is potentially a drive-through. That's a positive. You know, I see Doug at the grocery store. He lives out there.
I believe there's
his opinion too.
I think there's a distinct difference between West Omaha and Western Douglas County.
I'll tell you, you know, quite honestly, we try to get more of our members to come down for these meetings, and one of the excuses I hear from my members is, well, I live out on 168th and I don't want to drive all the way downtown. But, what was I gonna, my question was, is there a bus that runs out West Maple Road there? Because one of the concerns was people couldn't get out there if they didn't have a car.
Right.
No, it doesn't. Frankly, the bus system, in my opinion, should be taken over by the city or the county, because elected officials never let that happen. Mr. Kraft?
Yeah. Mary Ann, I think it'd be beneficial to all of us if you were to have a meeting and invite the mayors that are involved and the city council people that are involved, the rural fire districts that are involved, and discuss this with all of them. Because if we can get a buy-in from this group, that group. It'd be very beneficial. And Doug, if you'd be willing to write a letter of support, that you studied the issue, and you'll need, I'm sure, a vote of your group, but that you studied the issue and your group supports this, I think that'd be beneficial.
Well, we'll have to get our executive committee to sign off on it once it's
Right,
finalized.
and I realize that, but I think that'd be a wonderful asset to have. You know? So,
We'll give you a parking place in the building if you
His.
so,
Okay, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think I've got a question. Are you through? I'm serious.
no, well, the rural fire districts are gonna benefit,
Yeah.
which will benefit their people. And I'm sure there are other groups out there in western Douglas County
Spending too much on the
uh,
lawyers.
that we can get to buy in. I'm not sure what those groups are, but collectively, I'm sure everybody knows something I don't.
Well, the people of Valley would be glad to be able to go to 156th to get their license.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and people at 54th and Hell, where I go, would be glad to come someplace closer too. But let me ask a question. Everybody's talking about all this sort of stuff, and you know, I'm concerned about the marketing of all this. Now, when you market something, you usually have a budget. Well, okay, where in the world do we get the money to do what OPS did? I mean, and I don't think the first responder's gonna cough up a bunch, so I mean, where are we? Jim?
That's a great question. You know, the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
It's not our responsibility as Douglas County Commissioners to raise a marketing budget any more than it was the responsibility of Omaha school board members to raise the budgeting committee, commitment for that. But there's a way to do it. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here. People have been doing successfully marketing bonds in this city for a very long time. And what I would anticipate that once we get over, here's what the package is, that, you know, we reach out to community leaders, and we've already started that process with the first responders and others, to say, hey, here's the idea. If you guys can get on board and see your way clear to set up a committee supporting this bond issue, that's essentially what happens. It's not county commissioners that doing it, and certainly not a minute of time of the city's or the county's employees doing it. It's independent community leaders who see the value of what we're doing. That's who marketed the OPS thing. It wasn't anybody.
Well, I think it was, let's be serious, it was the contractors who did. And I think the people who would fund this would be Motorola. So I mean, I don't know who's gonna ask Motorola for the money.
They've
Somebody
already
else.
offered that they can.
Well, we gotta have money from Motorola and everybody else that's involved, the contractors and the renovators and whoever we're gonna use. You know, it's just like running for public office. I didn't go to a bunch of strangers. I went to people who I've known for years. He said, you know, hey, just have some dough, and they coughed up for the most part.
Commissioner, I think you have to be cautious though, because what the NRD did is they went right to the contractors and
Yeah.
people who either had contracts with them or would have contracts with them. It was very blatant. I would suggest that the county have a third party go out and contact them.
You're gonna have the blue box do it.
Yeah.
Do that in the
Keep their
notes.
hands cleaner that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest, that's who has the interest in it. That's every campaign, bond issue, it's always been the people who benefit. I mean, that's the way it works. And Jim's right on point.
And I think you've already made good progress for us in that respect, Mike. And the first responders don't have a economic dog in the fight, you know. They don't get a penny in their
No.
personal pocket. They're doing it because it's good for public safety.
No.
And I think that those are, you know, some of the kind of people that we need to have on board on this, so.
And I want to mention too that the meeting tomorrow of the first responders is canceled because it's a conflict with dealing with UNMC on the crime lab. So I'm going to get it rescheduled. I'm going to check and give it plenty of time so that we can invite everyone to attend. It was my fault that it ended up being we couldn't get it in the paper for the Open Meetings Act, because it turns out it didn't work out anyway. So I'll be sure everybody gets invited to participate. Any other questions or
We're
comments?
shooting for next Tuesday at the
Oh, excuse me,
Finance
yeah.
Committee.
Tuesday at the Finance Committee is what we're looking for.
And then we're gonna talk about the bond next Tuesday.
Tuesday morning, but we're talking about the mechanics of it. This
Yeah.
is more the financing of it.
Okay, let's see. The item on the agenda is discussion of the proposed November bond offering. I think we beat that one to death. Other business? Mr. Clerk.
Yes. If, just in the future, if one of us isn't up here when the meeting starts, if someone could give us a call. We were told it was starting at noon, so I don't think Constance got up here on time for the
Next
meeting
time we'll
started.
come down to your office.
All right,
We'll do that.
thank you.
Well, we discussed everything before you got here, so.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kraft?
And when I took a moment to talk about the county fair,
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you that Rita Clark is thinking of having a dunk tank and would like,
Guess who?
would like to have all the county officials participate. She specifically mentioned Dan Eck
All right.
and Mike Boyle.
We're good.
I'd like to have a house in San Diego, so tell her that.
But
Any other questions or comments?
you're
that
going to
are
be
not
getting
the
letters
agenda?
on that.
Okay, I think we've got our marching orders, and I do want to mention one thing, that Jim Kavanaugh has done a lot of work too with the first responders, and I appreciate that. We kind of doubled up on it, which is fabulous. So Jim has not mentioned that, and I appreciate it because it's helped. And so we'll have that meeting with, I forgot that, first responders at the finance meeting next Tuesday after the board meeting, okay? All right, and include the election office somewhere. Thanks a lot.